Hello, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be sharing some cliff notes on creating a culture of innovation based on my career experience, which has been both in industry and in government. So, a little bit about me. I've had an interesting career. My degrees are in physics, electrical engineering, and a master's in optics. And I was recruited straight out of grad school to work on national security programs. So, I didn't plan the career that I had, but I saw things that need to be done and I did it. And I had opportunities to lead at a very young age. I was fortunate that leaders saw in me attributes they wanted. I joke that having technical expertise and social and communication skills is great job security, and it has been for me. I've always been an agent of positive change, looking at how can we create new things, new capabilities, how can we transform the way we do business, including transforming organizations and working on organizational culture. I was recruited into positions to lead and advise. I led corporately at a very young age, was the youngest chief engineer in the history of my company and only the second female to be in that role. And then I was sworn in as a senior executive in the US government on my 33rd birthday. So that is considered a general flag officer equivalent for those in the military. So I had an opportunity to lead at a very young age where my peers at that rank were about 15 years or older than me. And it was in what I would like to call a wartime promotion where they needed leaders throughout the organizations in the government who saw what needed to be done and had the courage of their convictions to lead that change. I was able to be a trusted advisor to people at the most senior levels, people who reported directly to the President of the United States. This included national agency directors, and this would be general flag officers as well, who led organizations in the Department of Defense. Was many times the plus one that I was chosen out of the entire agency or organization to be there with the leader in these meetings with other leaders across the Defense Department and the intelligence community. So all of this was not without its challenges. Many people are risk adverse and they're very comfortable with the status quo, even if it's not good, and they see change as a threat. So if you're a change agent, that generally means that you are the subject of a lot of attack. And in my experience, there's three stages. First, they will attack what you're doing. So your technical expertise or the project or whatever you're working on. And if that doesn't work, then they'll attack you professionally. And if that doesn't work, they will attack you personally. And I've been on the receiving end of such attacks in that cycle more times than I care to remember, but I'm here to tell you about it. So overall, the message I would say is stay true to yourself and your convictions. That's what I did. And I had the courage in my convictions and had a tremendous opportunity to make a positive impact in the world and also lead some really great groups and do what others considered would be impossible. So how do you create a culture of innovation? First, it starts with purpose. I love a quote by author Simon Sinek. All organizations start with a why, but only the great ones keep their why year after year. People buy why you do it, not what you do. And in my experience, I found that to be similar with leadership. If you have a passion for a mission and can inspire a shared vision, other people will want you to lead them. So I'll give you a case study. I spent time at one of the most innovative companies in the world, Google. So we'll do a little bit of a case study on how do you keep that startup mentality, that modus operandi, even as you go into a global company. Well, Google did this intentionally, and I like to quote from their IPO letter. Google is not a conventional company. We do not intend to become one, and they certainly honored that. They emphasize an atmosphere of creativity and challenge, and if you look at things like Google X and moonshots, they dream big, take on hard problems, and they don't want to be limited by conventional thinking because you can't tackle hard problems that way. They want to think radically differently and meet those challenges. They have a three-part framework: mission, transparency, and voice, meaning everybody knows the mission. There's transparency in the organization, you know what's going on. One of the things that's very famous is TGI Fridays, which they actually ended up changing to Thursdays while I was there, recognizing that their global workforce, for many of them, Friday in California was already the weekend. But that was a wonderful opportunity to really hear firsthand from the leadership of the company, of all kinds of projects that were going on. And some of these were super sensitive. And they expected that every employee would warrant that trust. And so that allowed a great dialogue. Also, everyone has a voice. So anyone in the company could be there at Charlie's Cafe at the Googleplex, take the mic, walk up and go ask any of the leadership a question, and they would answer it. So that really helped to build on this culture of innovation, transparency, trust. So what does Google look for in potential employees? And one thing I will note is when they go to hiring, it's not just the decision of that person's immediate boss or just that team. They do a committee decision because they want to take a broader perspective to make sure if they're bringing someone on board, not just a good fit for that particular job, but they're a good fit for the company as a whole. So attributes they look for is generalists who are passionate about many things. Of course, you need the technical expertise or whatever specific expertise for the job. But then when people are passionate, they are excited, they can get energized about doing something. Also, people that are comfortable with ambiguity, they are not afraid of change. And then people who have a bias for action. And that combination, passionate people, not afraid of change, bias for action, means good for the company and for the long term, so that they have a great cultural fit, they will do well at Google. Their philosophy is culture fit is the most important, and open is better than closed, default to share. Because one point to make here is by doing that, other people can discover your work, and you have no idea who could benefit from your work or who could contribute to it. Maybe someone's not working on your team, but they have expertise in that area and could contribute. Maybe somebody's working on something related and discovers your body of work and could collaborate with you for the better of their project. They also focus on hiring good people and then trusting them and empowering them. And they also acknowledge that their time is valuable. I'll give you an example of that. How many of us have been frustrated where your tech, your computer, there's some issue where it's not working and you have to put in a trouble ticket and you wait hours or days to get it fixed? Not at Google. They have full-time employees that work at TechStop. You have a problem, you go there. They work on it, fix it, because your time is valuable and they want you to be up and running optimally. They encourage collaboration. That's bidirectional, not just one-way transmit, and they want it vertically with the leadership and horizontally across the organization. They also have a philosophy that if you give people freedom, they will amaze you. You will not find macromanagement there. True googly behavior is empowering decision-making and taking action at the lowest level possible. They want people to be able to work on cool stuff that matters, and that makes them really love working there and want to stay. They believe in working from anywhere, any team, anytime, any place, any device. To do so, they had to develop tools to enable that, and now they share those tools with people worldwide so they can enable themselves personally or their own businesses. So they focus on using technology to simplify and enhance people's lives. They also learn quickly. Remember the always in beta, the little Google subtitle beta? That's because they're constantly innovating and improving while keeping the original mission, that why, in mind. And an example is search. So in the beginning, you might say, what is a search? And search, what is the weather in Santa Barbara, California? And maybe you would get links to weather forecast pages. Now it's a nice box that shows you a pictograph of it's sunny or cloudy or whatever it might be, and it can give you a 5-10 day forecast. So they could be really nailing that corner in the market, like with search, but knowing that if they aren't constantly innovating, they could fall behind. They also have a philosophy of publish early, perfect over time. So it's never 100%. We can always be improving things. And so they do dog fooding, which is to eat your own dog food. Everybody internal to the organization tests things out before they go to public beta testers. And so any given time, an employee, they could be running code in the background where you're trying the new tool so they can see how it works. And also we have an opportunity internal to the company to give feedback. And one thing being an engineer, I can say this, is sometimes what the engineers think is intuitive, the rest of the populace does not think is intuitive. And that's an opportunity for people to kick the tires and say, where in the world did you put this feature? I can't find it. This doesn't make any sense. And they'll go back and change it to make something more intuitive to the broader populace. And they also have a model of fail fast. They want to be innovating all of the time, but hey, if it didn't work, honor the attempt and effort, but cut your losses. And too many times I see this in big organizations and particularly in government. They keep thinking, give it a little more time, throw more money at it, it's going to get better, and it doesn't. And so part of the resistance to saying, hey, it didn't work, let's just cut our losses, is people also feel personally tied to that project. And so another tenet here is fail gracefully. If your project gets cut, it is not seen as a personal failure, and that allows people to let go because their identity isn't tied to that project. They believe if we aren't failing sometime and learning from those failures, we will not stay on the cutting edge. So there's some good corporate philosophies for staying innovative even as you go global. So some observations and insights from my personal experience is the biggest barriers to innovation and that kind of collaboration is culture is the number one, and those are the people in the organization. Policy, which is the business practices, and then also technology. And I'll tell you, as a technologist, technology is the easy part. You have got to get the culture right. And that is the leader of the organization and the leadership team. That's the number one thing I'll tell, whether it's CEOs or directors of national agencies. You have got to set the culture and make sure everybody on your leadership team lives and breathes that culture, because that sets the tone for the whole organization. Then you have the opportunity to change policy, better enable new business practices to better enable your mission, and you can bring in technology enablers as well. So culture is created by values and behavior. Values must be clear and must be exhibited in the behavior throughout your organization. What you do and how you do it demonstrates what you believe and how you want to be perceived. So innovation is less about technology and more about transformation to create the right environment. Creating a culture of innovation means you're going to attract top talent, and having top talent helps feed that culture of innovation, and that becomes a virtuous cycle. And you have to have an organizational environment and tools that will fuel that virtuous cycle. Common principles that I found to be success factors are: recognize that ideas come from everywhere. Create an open and collaborative environment. Default to share everything you can. Use data-based, meaning apolitical decision making, so you have data to back your decisions. Focus on your client, your customer, your user, and do what's right for them, and it'll be good for your business. Pursue rapid innovation, not perfection, and give employees a license to pursue dreams. Hiring practices that I've seen are success factors are: look for people who believe in what you believe in. They share your core values. They're passionate. They are comfortable with change. They have a bias for action. Those type of people will go above and beyond for you and be a good long-term fit for your organization. And on the topic of diversity, what I've seen is that we need diversity of thought, experiences, and perspectives, because without it, you risk failures of imagination. On risk and failure, successful innovators embrace intelligent risk. They don't accept things as they are today. They imagine how they could be and work to make it so. So I say, dare to be audacious and have a healthy disregard for the impossible. And on the topic of impossible, one of my favorite quotes is by Muhammad Ali, American professional boxer, and it is this: impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. And I actually saw that on a sporting goods ad when I was in New Zealand, and wrote it on the back of a piece of paper, got back to my office, typed it up, and posted it on my wall. So whenever my team and I would run into something where people say it's impossible, we'd read that quote and say, no, it's not. We can do this. So best practices: recognize that ideas are in your midst. Default to share. Engage your colleagues regularly. Get insight. Helps build buy-in for what you're trying to do. And engage your customers early and continually so you can co-create with your colleagues and customers. I'll give an example, like tool development. So many times, and Google uses this model as well, get the basic skeletal tool out there and then get people's feedback. And I loved working with special operators because they would give you really honest feedback. This is great, this is bad, you need to change this. But now you co-create with them. So they say, hey, this is great, wish it had this feature, or this feature is not intuitive. You can't divine the perfect tool or solution, but you get those inputs from your colleagues, from your ultimate customer base, and together you can create something great. If there are options or trade-offs, never assume Always ask for their input. That communication with the customer is key. Default to communicate. Recognize that your best people are your most valuable resource and treat them like that. Hire good people who share your values. Trust and empower them. Give them freedom. Be transparent. Communicate often to build trust. And I've made this point so many times, silence is a void and something is going to fill it. So either your truth of what's going on. Say I was an advisor to a national agency director on the biggest transformation the agency had seen in over 15 years. And the leadership was still going through the process. Well, all the employees knew this was going on and they wanted to know what was going on. And the leadership was afraid to share because they hadn't figured it all out. I said, but that's okay. You've got to share with them what you know as you know it, so they have truth of where we are in this process, because in the absence of any information, you have rumors, you have misinformation, and you're going to spend more time trying to do damage control than if you'd just been communicating with them regularly. So be decisive, no paralysis through analysis. You must recognize that not making a decision is a decision in itself, and it has consequences. And so you have to make the best decision you have with the data you have. Be open if more data comes in, and maybe do a vector check. Greatest example of this is combatant commanders. They don't have the luxury often of waiting for all the data to come in. They're in combat zones, they have to make decisions, they've got troops in harm's way, they have to make the best decision with what they have, keep the radar up, open to other inputs, do the vector checks, and course correct as necessary. Have trusted agents outside your immediate organization. This is so key to make sure, one, you're getting a balanced perspective, and that you're getting truth. Sometimes that gets filtered. So to have a more holistic perspective and to guard against groupthink and blind spots, you need these trusted agents. Be open-minded, no age or rank bias. So an example of potential age bias, I was working with a major system integrator in the aerospace industry that works with the government, and they were saying, Michele, how do we deal with hard challenges? And I said, you know what? You have a bunch of 20-somethings and 30-somethings on your staff. They haven't been there. They haven't done that. They don't know that it didn't work in the past. Why don't you give them that hard problem? Go see how they would tackle it. At the same time, take your more experienced people, as the government would call them, graybeards, give them that same problem, sequester them from each other, and then see at the end, bring them together and see how they looked at tackling those problems. And the feedback I got was, this is tremendous. It's really changed the way they approach problem solving now. They can see the value of the people from all different generations and experience levels and coming together towards a common goal. As far as rank, nothing's better than the military for that example. They're very rank conscious, hierarchy conscious, but when you're dealing with a crisis, so many times you need to be able to create a way for everybody who has expertise and input to have a seat at the table and a voice. Remind the general flag officers, that two-striper out there swabbing the decks on the weekends, maybe a reservist, is guess what their day job is during the week at their company, their cybersecurity. So when you're dealing with an issue, you want them to have a seat at the table and have a voice. Find your innovators and protect your rogues. And what do I mean? Go find on the internet the Apple ad, Think Different, one of my favorite ads of all time. But the tenet there is the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And these people who think differently will save you in a bind. So my advice to innovators is get buy-in the top. Buy-in from the top is golden because you can go further and faster with top cover. But you also must engage the middle management and figure out what motivates them. I went into government after 9/11 thinking we're all going to do what's right for America and the warfighter. And then I quickly realized, well, not everybody's wired that way. So I had to figure out what motivated that particular middle manager, and then how to frame what I was trying to accomplish for the good of America and the warfighter in terms that they would understand, and so they can understand how it was in their best interest to help me do this. And then find those who need what you have. The desperate user is your best customer. Give them a tool and they're going to love it. So leverage the early adopters to help you create critical mass, and then you're going to get that tipping point. And remember, don't take no from someone who does not have the authority to give you a yes in the first place. You will find many naysayers. Press forward, it needs to be done. Trust your gut instinct, listen to your intuition. Act with integrity, always be honest and do what is right. You have to live with yourself. The political winds may change, but the truth remains the same. Stay true to yourself and your convictions. Follow your heart and your inner voice. Embrace intelligent risk. It's what made our country, America, great. And there's a quote from the movie Moneyball, and it's about new ways of approaching putting together a winning baseball team. And Billy Beane had this radical new approach to doing it, and many people frowned on it, thought he was crazy. But then someone who'd been in this business forever tells Billy Beane, the first one through the wall always gets bloody. The people holding the reins go crazy. It's threatening the way they do business, their livelihoods, their jobs, the way they do things. But anyone who's not using your model, they're dinosaurs. Man, I've been the first one through the wall so many times, and it's not pleasant. But in the example of this movie and many other examples, have an opportunity to radically change things for the better. And an example from intelligence is after 9/11, the intelligence community realized we failed to connect the dots. We didn't put these pieces together. And so many agencies worked in silos because of so-called security issues. And they weren't sharing and not realizing that lack of sharing could be a security issue as well. And so they realized the way we've done business isn't working anymore. And being open to, how can technology help? How can we enable information sharing and collaboration and gain that shared situational awareness and critical insight? So be purpose-driven. That is where you will find true happiness, not in careerism and money. What is unique about you? Your personality, your interests, your talents. That's the sweet spot when you're doing what you're meant to do and loving it. And I'll give you an example. Is my veteran husband. He had a retired colonel working for him. And he said to him one day, I could never do what your wife does. And he says to him, what do you mean? So your wife has the ability to imagine things and create them, or to see how something could be and transform it and make it so. And he says, I couldn't do any of that. But once you get it up and running, I can run it. And when he shared that with me, that was a seminal moment in my life when I realized, oh, that's something unique to me that other people don't like to do. I love that. I love the challenge. I love being on the ground floor. I love helping affect positive change. I thrive on that. And then I realized some people are petrified of that. They would never want to be put in that position, and they're not comfortable with it, but they'd like to just run it after it's done. For me, I'm like, okay, I'll go on to the next challenge, hand this off to you. So it's good to have that feedback where you gain, oh, hey, that's something unique about me. That's a way I can contribute to the betterment of the world. So follow your heart, use your talents, find your passion, and pursue it with purpose. Don't tolerate a core value mismatch with your leadership or with your company. You will be miserable. Work with, to the best of your ability, find people who share your values and want to work with you towards a common mission. That's where you're going to be the happiest. Have the courage to speak truth to power. America and the world are counting on you to do so. Remember, we need diversity of thought, and this is not a time for political correctness. We need a respectful dialogue and debate with people from a variety of perspectives to ensure we are making the best informed decisions. And then remember, networking is working. As you come in contact with new people, keep their contact information. You never know when you might want to reach out to them. It could be the next day, it could be in a month, could be in the next few years. But building that network of like-minded people can be very powerful. And remember, you are never too young to lead. There's a great quote by Abraham Lincoln that says, the best way to predict your future is to define it. So don't accept how things are today. Imagine how they could be and make them so. Key tenet I want to leave you with is if you're not growing, learning, challenging the status quo, taking intelligent risk, and learning from failure, you risk becoming irrelevant. So question to ask yourself, what is your why? Your purpose, your cause, your mission in life? And then I give you a challenge. Pursue your passion, live your purpose, engage the culture, and change the world. Thank you so much for listening in. Be blessed.